Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie, and you can't see me right now for technical reasons, but on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual event with Dr. Paul Koudounaris in conversation with Caitlin Doughty, discussing A Cat's Tale, A Journey Through Feline History. We're so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this time. We'll be hosting more virtual events in the future, and you can learn about them on our website, booksoup.com, as well as our social media at BookSoup. Our next event is tomorrow, November 11th at 6 p.m. with Michael Greco in conversation with Oedipus and Tammy Heidi, discussing punk, post-punk, and new wave, onstage, backstage, and in your face. For regular updates on upcoming events, please feel free to subscribe to our email newsletter, which you can do on our website. To submit a question during the event, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on the list that you'd like our speakers to answer, please click the like button. They will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Please do not use the sidebar chat to ask a question. Also, support your bookstore and our authors and purchase a copy of tonight's featured books. To do that, just click on the green purchase button directly below the viewer screen. The link will redirect you to our website where you can continue your checkout process. We're selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro FM and Kobo for those who are interested. A little more about Paul. Paul has a PhD in art history from UCLA. His publications in the field of charnel house and ossuary research have made him a well-known figure in the field of macabre art and art history. He is the author of the books Empire of Death, Heavenly Bodies, and Memento Mori. He is also a member of the Order of the Good Death. A little more about Caitlin. Caitlin is a mortician, activist, and funeral industry rabble-rouser. In 2011, she founded the Death Acceptance Movement, the Death Acceptance Collective, the Order of the Good Death, which has spawned the Death Positive movement. Her educational web series, Ask a Mortician, has been viewed almost 150 million times. All three of her books, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, From Here to Eternity, and Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs, were New York Times bestsellers. She lives in Los Angeles, where she owns a funeral home, Clarity Funerals. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Paul and Caitlin. Enjoy the presentation.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Can you make us big again?
Oh, hi. There we are. And there's a very...
We'll figure this out.
We'll figure the cat out. She'll get herself positioned comfortably.
We've had delightful combination of analog tech issues, a live cat,
and feline tech issues.
Yes, actual tech issues. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I know you are all so excited for Dr. Paul Koudounaris and Baba the cat. Two creatures that I get very excited to see, and that's why I'm in a COVID bubble with them for a full month out here in the desert. And tonight we're going to talk about Paul's new book. Paul and Baba's new book, A Cat's Tale, written by Baba, called by me, Caitlin Doughty, a triple threat model, writer, incisive cultural historian.
And sleeping cat.
And sleeping cat tonight. So there might be a way for us to get the screen back up side by side so you can see the PowerPoint with us. But first I will start and just ask you to briefly describe the book.
Well, the book, A Cat's Tale, is a feline history but told from a cat's point of view. And I deliberately said it in her voice and used her as the muse so she could lead everybody from a cat's perspective, not tell it from a human perspective, but what would a cat think about prehistoric times? What would a cat think about ancient Egypt? And do all the archival research. But, history, now we're at a point where history is being told from very many voices, but they're still human voices. And this was an attempt to place history in a non-human voice and let them have their say.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I think that when you talk about let's not stay with the same white male historical perspective, most people don't think cats is the next frontier of that.
And what I wanted to do tonight specifically, since the store, and I know we have people from all over the country and some from all over the world, but since the store's in Los Angeles, and you still live in Los Angeles, I used to live in Los Angeles, she's from Los Angeles, and if you purchase the book and read through it, what you're going to find is so many of the famous cats in our American cat section are from Los Angeles. I'd like to start out, before we talk about the book, with maybe a little micro-history of cats in Southern California.
Fantastic. So how did because cats aren't native to California, right? How did domestic cats get to California?
That's a great question, because one thing we talk about in the book is our narrator, kind of traces the migration of felines from the ancient Middle East across Asia and into Europe. And the last phase of their conquest of the globe comes during the Age of Exploration, where they wind up crossing the Atlantic, going first to the Americas, and then, of course, eventually to places like Australia. So these are lands, Australia, North America, South America, these are lands that didn't have domestic felines up until the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. And of course, when we think about the colonization of the area that became the United States, we usually think of the East Coast, but these cats in Southern California came a different way. They were migrants, but they came up through Mexico. They came up with the first recorded cats that were in Southern California, came with a padre by the name of Francisco Uria, who was one of the Spanish missionaries, came up from Mexico. So these were cats that probably came from Spain and had been domestic in Spain for several generations, of course, and then domestic in Mexico for several generations before traveling with him. And he had 4 that he traveled with, that he loved, that are the first recorded cats in the history of Southern California, all named after favorite saints. San Francisco, Santa Clara, Santa Ynez, and Santa Barbara. Came up with this padre, traveled everywhere with them. He truly loved them, and there is a remarkable story about this man and his cats. They were all considered very smart cats. And by the way, if you can see the little inset picture.
Yeah, Maggie, can we make them big? Can we make the PowerPoint big? There we go.
Or we can put them side by side. This is Baba as this particular Franciscan missionary. This picture is not in the book. It was considered maybe not primo for our purposes. Some people made fun of the wig. I don't know. I liked it. And some people said there might be a little bit of weird tension because he's got a tiny altar boy statue. But this is Baba as this particular padre. And there's this remarkable story about this Franciscan friar's cats, the first known cats in Southern California. And I'll show you this chronicle. It is said he died at Mission Santa Barbara. He went first to Ventura and then Santa Barbara. When he died, these cats walked out of the death chamber after he passed away, and it is said that they went to the rope that held the bell in the chapel, and they started jumping on it and ringing the bell, which sounds like it's got to be folklore or mythology. But I'll point out that these cats had lived their entire lives in missions. They knew about the rope and the bell, and they knew that the bell was important, so that could be a true story. There is one bit of folklore about these 4 cats as well. I don't know, are you interested in like a death stuff maybe?
I would take a death story. I'd also take, if we know anything about Paul Koudounaris, is that he's got the ghost stories and he's got the cat stories. So I just want to jump in, give the people what they want. Give us like a cat ghost story.
Well, there is a cat ghost story involving these 4 cats.
This is not surprising to me.
It is said, actually, there are a couple cat ghost stories related to the Spanish missions, but there's also one related to Mission San Fernando. It is said that there are reports of a ghostly lady in white. No one knows who she is, wearing a colonial dress. And when this ghost would appear and walk by, all the living cats in the neighborhood would turn around and start following her, and then she would disappear and the cats would disperse.
That's the ghost I hope to be.
But it is said that after the cats died, these first 4 cats, their spirits kind of hung around the mission. And Father Uria had died, it was said, on a rainy night. So it was said on rainy nights, if you listened carefully, you'd be able to hear cats meow.
Just a ghostly meow.
The ghost of these 4 cats at the missions.
I thought there was going to be a ghostly bell ringing that came from...
No, because the cat ghosts aren't strong enough in their claws to grab the bread.
That's just ghost science, people.
That's ghost science.
That's ghost science. So immediately after this, did they make the immediate transition into being the beloved house cats that we know today?
No, and in chapter 6 of the book, I talk a lot about cats in the American West. And I have some slides for that. I don't know if we can blow them back up. But in chapter 6 of the book, you can see a little picture on the inset. In chapter 6 of the book, I talk about cats on the western frontier, or well, I should say Baba talks about cats on the western frontier. Cats on the western frontier, first of all, were really hardy, and they were really valuable because there were not that many of them, because only a few of them had really come up from Mexico, and only a few had come from the East Coast at this time. In the 1880s in Arizona, a domestic cat, any cat, was worth $10, which was like, for some people, that was a couple months' wage at the time. Why were these cats so incredibly valuable? It's because they needed them as mousers. One of the things I mentioned in the book, this is not well known because our understanding of cowboys comes from movies, which are
not a lot of cats in cowboy movies.
But cowboys loved cats and they had them. And some cowboys would in fact travel with them. And they would travel with these cats, like they'd have like a little thing on their saddle horn for these cats. I know it sounds crazy, but they would. And the reason why is because they needed these cats, and this will make sense. They needed these cats to protect their bags from field mice at night. And so these cats were super valuable. There was a guy who had a business, and I mentioned this in the book too. This guy had a business. He would get stray cats in the Midwest, in the East, and then transport them to the Dakotas, and he'd offer money for them. He'd offer anywhere, depending on size, he'd offer 50 cents to $1 for stray cats in the Midwest and the East Coast, and he had sent 3 trainloads full of them, train cars full of stray cats up to the Dakotas to be sold to ranchers on the frontier to protect their crops from mice and vermin. So they were super valuable.
I'm imagining just the cowboy music playing, like wah, 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 and they're clip-clopping along, and there's just cats following along behind, meowing along behind the cowboy.
One of the things that I mentioned in the book, it's counterintuitive to the way we really understand the United States. But one of the things that she, our narrator, talks about in the book is that the acceptance of cats as pets in the United States travels from west to east, not east to west, because it was very typical, of course, in the United States to think of culture and in anything, culturally valuable or intellectual to travel from east to west. But with cats, it was the other way, because they really became accepted. They were kind of like second-rate animals to dogs on the East Coast. But out west, they were very valuable, and living with them, as these ranchers were, and as these farmers were, and as these cowboys were, living with them in close company, they really became popular, and they really understood their value. So the love of cats in the United States really travels west to east, not east to west.
Oh, there you go. So now there were also, the cats were seen as sort of negative or strange up until the 20th century.
Yeah, they were. And we have a couple more slides I'd love to show you. We can pop them back up. This one, this is great. So this is from the Los Angeles Times, 1897. And it was an article about weird clubs in Los Angeles, just like crazy, unimaginable things. Our quota of club freaks. And the number one that they list was a cat club. It's like, are you kidding? A club with cats, that along with coffin clubs, mouth organ clubs, one-legged men club. Down there at the bottom is a woman's lawyer club. Gaslight. Are you kidding? Women's lawyers, just nuts. But number one of the freakish clubs in Los Angeles was a club for cat lovers. There's another, this is great. So this was another article from the LA Times. This guy has cat, this watchman, has cats for company, and he likes them. Are you kidding? It's one thing to have them, but to like them? So up until the 1890s, they were utilitarian animals for their ability in California, in Southern California. They were utilitarian animals for their ability to catch vermin, but they weren't beloved the way dogs were. They weren't considered like household pets. They were a utilitarian animal.
Was anybody getting Stefan vibes from that club thing? Like, this club has it all. Cats, coffins, one-armed men,
one-legged
woman lawyers. Like,
mouth organs and bloomer club too.
So it sounds like cats had a very, as you said, utilitarian purpose for a long time. But now cats are beloved little fluffkins. When did they get to stop working so hard and come into the home and start to relax a little bit?
In Los Angeles, in Southern California, the big year, the year that cats broke, was 1905. And I have a press clipping on that too, if you want to blow that up. 1905 is the year that cats broke on the West Coast in Los Angeles. That was when that cat club that everybody thought was so wacky a decade before put on a show. Thousands of dollars in cats, Los Angeles society's latest fad. They put on a show in Los Angeles of domestic cats modeled after a dog show to show everybody what great animals they actually were. And there were some really valuable cats at that show. For instance, one of the only purebred Siamese cats was in Los Angeles and was at this show, and this was a super big deal. So 1905 was kind of the big year that cats broke. And here's a term for some of you. It's in the book, and it may be a new term for some of you. It's going to be a favorite term for some of you. Pussyology was the current term at that time in 1905 for cat care. And so the papers, cats kind of broke big around 1905. They started really becoming household pets on the West Coast. And this term, the science of pussyology, was the term for cat care. And there would be manuals written, pussyology manuals. That term fell out of use. I can think of several reasons why, but it fell out of use. But the science of pussyology becomes the term for cat care. And they start running articles in the paper about, like pussyologists, which are basically, cat care experts.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know this, but I have a doctorate in pussyology.
Yeah.
You're Dr. Paul, I'm Dr. Caitlin, doctor of pussyology.
It has nothing to do with gynecology, but wouldn't it be better if it had
probably,
yeah.
Yes. So this book in particular, my favorite section of it came at the end when we talked about like famous showbiz cats.
Yeah.
And that really is a Los Angeles-based rise, right? The rise of the like famous cat.
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this material, because so much of what we're talking about right now is in this book, because some of the greatest American cats, and I'll tell you, all of them stray cats or pound cats, some of the first, just like Baba, a stray, a pound cat, some of the greatest American cats that she talks about in this book became famed because of an early connection to Hollywood. We think of the early films, and we think of Rin Tin Tin or some of the famous horses from the Western, but there were cats too. And I brought a few clippings also, if we could blow these up. One of the first famous movie cats, and really America's first feline film star, feline film celebrity, was a girl by the name of Pepper. Now, I know on that it says his, but it wasn't his, it was her. Pepper was female. Pepper becomes the first feline film star. And this was very rare at the time. This was actually shocking, because the early movies, it was said that forget it. You could not have cats in a film. They were untrainable. You could have dogs and you could have horses. You could have certain types of birds, but you could not have cats. And there were even articles in the early film magazines that says just cats are unacceptable for the screen. They're not trainable. And there was a stray cat had given a birth to a litter of kittens under the soundstage at Max Sennett Studios way back when it was still in Echo Park. And one of these kittens, a grayish kitten, right here by the name of Pepper, squirmed up through the floorboards one day and kind of plops down onto the floorboards of the studio. And they kind of like, look at that kitten. It just seems so at home on the stage. And so they're like, yeah, turn a light on that kid. They turn a light on her. No problem. Roll some tape. And they rolled some tape. And this little bit of tape still exists of this kitten chasing a little string. And it's magical because she really had it. She had the star quality and she was not bothered by it at all. They're like, I think we found ourselves a cat. And Pepper goes on. Here are a couple more, if you want to pop them up, a couple more Pepper press clippings. Pepper goes on to, over there on the left are a couple stills from her first credited role. The first credited role ever given to a feline was in a movie called The Little Hero. And these are stills from The Little Hero. Now, Pepper was not the little hero. The little hero, no, because she's still a cat, so she's the bad one. The little hero was a dog named Teddy, the wonder dog, who actually off screen was Pepper's best friend. But the little hero was a short, And she was credited in it. It was like his first credited role ever for a feline in Hollywood. And in The Little Hero, a woman leaves to run her errands, and she has a cat, played by Pepper, and she has a bird. And she tells the cat, in no uncertain terms, do not try to kill the bird while I'm gone. Well, you know what's going to happen. So Teddy is the little hero. And Teddy hears, see, you can see Pepper over by the bird cage there, the one on the bottom. And Teddy hears the bird screaming for help. And Teddy looks in and sees the cat about to get the bird. And so Teddy, being too big a coward to take on one small cat, runs over and gets 4 gigantic dogs and tells them, you know, we need help. This bird's going to get it from this cat. And this whole cavalcade of dogs comes running into the house and stops Pepper from killing the bird. But like I said, it was a film role for a cat.
So we have the initial cat film roles, but they're still sort of pro-dog propaganda.
It's still pro-dog for a long time. Pepper died and was replaced. Here's an interesting bit of trivia. Remember I said that Pepper's best friend off screen is Teddy the Wonder Dog. After Teddy died, Pepper refused to ever act again.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting, huh? Yeah. Pepper refused to take the screen again. They tried to train one of her daughters and she wouldn't. So they got another cat. This is a press clipping for a cat named Puzzums. Cats, yes. Cats.
Why would it be Puzzums, not Pussums?
It's just how they pronounced it as Puzzums. I don't know. Well, that name is sometimes spelled with 2 Z's too. This cat is buried in the Los Angeles Memorial Pet Cemetery. Pepper was not, because Pepper predated the pet cemetery. But anyway, you bring up a very good point. It was still predominantly a dog's town. And in the book, right here in this book, she tells you who changed it. It was no longer a dog's town, it was a cat's town. And you know who this cat is. This cat is... Orangey, yeah.
Oscar winner. Oscar-winning cat.
No. Patsy winner.
Patsy winner, but it was the version of the feline.
Yes, it was the animal version of the Oscars. They used to give out an award called the Patsy Awards. That was the animal version of the Oscars, and they would have this ceremony at the Pantages Theater that Ronald Reagan would host, because he had been in that movie with that ape, right?
Well, that's the kind of stuff Ronald Reagan used to do before he became president. That was like the level of Ronald Reagan.
This must have been a great program, because they would give all the tickets, because these were animal stars in an animal movie, so they appealed to kids, so they give all the tickets away to kids from orphanages.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually really good. Hollywood had a heart at one time. And anyway, so you guys know this cat, Orangey, who, like I said, she gives a lot of play to Orangey in the book, the narrator does, because Orangey is a very important cat. Orangey is the cat who turned it around in Hollywood, because yes, Pepper had gotten credited roles, but Pepper had never had a starring role. No cat had ever been trusted to carry a film until 1950. This cat, now Orangey, and we just showed it. We just showed Orangey at breakfast at Tiffany's, but I'll show you some more images. You guys know this cat named Orangey, because Orangey is the cat who had been at breakfast at Tiffany's. But that was at the end of Orangey's career. Orangey is, in fact, the Marlon Brando of cats. A rabble-rouser, hard to deal with, and brilliant actor. Orangey, and so I said that this whole, like I said, this whole history is in the book. It's really fascinating stuff. Paramount wanted to make a movie called Rhubarb, and it was based on a book about an eccentric millionaire who owned the Brooklyn Dodgers. So before the Dodgers were in Los Angeles, owned the Brooklyn Dodgers and died and left the baseball team in his will to a street cat. And so this street cat gets this baseball team. And they were like, well, if we're gonna make this movie, we're gonna have to give a starring role to a cat. And they couldn't find the right cat. Now remember, I said it's always pound cats, and that was the problem. They were talking to animal trainers, and they said, it's like, hey, we need a cat for this movie. And these animal trainers would bring them really nice cats. It's like, it's a nice cat. We need a street cat. This is a street cat. Come on, can you help us out? They couldn't find the right cat. So they put a casting call in the paper. They put an ad in the Wanted. It actually said, wanted for feature film, mean, rough, scar-faced cat. They got one. They got one from Van Nuys. A lady in Van Nuys had a big, mean orange cat living under a bush in her yard. And the cat would let her touch her. And the one's name was Agnes Murray, would let her touch it, but nobody else would try to tear off her fingers. She's like, boy, it sounds like that's the kind of cat they want. So she gets this monster, this big brute, and Orangey was big, gets this big brute into a box, drives it down to Paramount, and they're like, that's it, that's our star we've been looking for. And they turn the cat over to this guy named Frank Inn, who's the most famous animal trainer in Hollywood history. He's the one who trained Higgins, who was the dog who played Benji. He trained the pig who played Arnold Ziffel on Green Acres, famous animal trainer. Frank Inn said that by the end of that film, his covered scars, because this cat was a monster. This cat could act like he's literally the Marlon Brando cat. And I think we have here, so if you want to pop this back up, we have the movie poster, and we have a still from the movie. And in the book, we actually, some of the illustrations we use, because it's not just pictures of Baba, there are also illustrations. I actually find these. We have a lobby card and some other stuff from Rhubarb, really important film in the history of feline cinema. Where is it? So here you can see this is we're showing, this is a lobby card from Rhubarb and some of the Rhubarb press clippings. So this cat stars in this film. The film tanks. It was a stupid idea. It's like nobody really wants to watch this dumb comedy about a cat that owns a baseball team, but the cat was good. The cat became, you mentioned the Patsy Awards, which were the animal version of the Oscars, becomes the first cat ever, because all the Patsy Awards, all these awards have always gone to dogs and horses, becomes the typical, becomes the first cat to ever win a Patsy Award. Those are, and these, they, at one point in time in Hollywood, they wanted to do an animal walk of fame, but the project didn't work out. They took the paw prints of all the animals that had won the acting awards. And so now these are actually at the Burbank Animal Shelter. If you want to visit these, you can see them. You can see like Mr. Ed and some of these other animals. Their paw prints are in cement outside the Burbank Animal Shelter. First cat to ever win an acting award, and becomes the only animal to ever win 2 Patsy Awards. Wow. I told you, the Marlon Brando cats, a decade later. That long a career in Hollywood, a decade later.
As a cat.
For Breakfast at Tiffany's.
What a hero. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is, we got Baba, our star here, we got Orangey, we got Pepper. Why is it stray cats and shelter cats that end up being our big stars?
I think they're so, I think that surviving as a stray and having that background makes them so smart. It makes them so adaptable. And it breeds a kind of determination, which who she is still sleeping, is not really showing us tonight. She's just, I'm sorry, it's nap time, guys. But I think that's what it is. I think that being not pampered, that growing up that way, that surviving on the streets has taught them to be very smart, to be very adaptable, and importantly, like her when we were doing the photos, to read the cues that the outside world is giving them.
And do you think that there is something, obviously I think Baba has it, but do you think that certain cats just have it? Yeah, they just have the it factor.
Yeah, for sure. And as a photographer, I can see it. Like I'll go to the shelter and take pictures of some cats that they just light up the camera. Some of them really do have it, and Pepper had it for sure. Pepper absolutely had the it factor. If you ever see, because I mentioned that we talked about that cat Puzzums that replaced Pepper. Puzzums was a cat who could fill in those roles. It never had the star quality that Pepper did. It simply didn't have the it factor. It didn't have the wow.
Yeah, you just can't put any old cat on screen. No. It doesn't work.
But I'd like to tell you about some of the other famous cats in Los Angeles. Some of the hero cats. If we can pop this up. Did you know that the LAPD used to have a police cat? Battling Tom. Battling Tom. No, now take a look at this. Tom is getting tended by an ambulance driver. What happened to that cat? It's a bizarre story. Battling Tom was at the Van Nuys division, the Valley division of the LAPD. And They brought in a criminal, and the police weren't paying attention. You know, the coppers weren't minding the store, and the guy snuck out, was running down the street, but the cat saw. And Battling Tom, the police cat, took off after this criminal, chasing him down the street. You know, the long claw of justice, you know, trying to get this guy, and jumped him from behind, jumped on this guy. Anyway, no, Battling Tom did not bring the crook in. That's why Battling Tom is getting beaten up. That's why Battling Tom is getting bandaged up by the ambulance guy. Battling Tom did not take the crook down, but in that article, the captain said Tommy gave him something to remember by.
You get him, Tommy.
Yeah, another one of these famous heroic cats from LA, and this one is in the book too. This is a really important historical cat by the name of Cooley, born like you were in Hawaii, but becomes an LA cat after World War II. This cat received more military decorations, not only than any cat, but as many decorations as any dog in World War II. But we forget about this. This cat received 3 service ribbons and 4 battle stars from the United States Navy. Was that, if you see in that picture, there's a little note on the chair in front of him. That cat was the last surviving World War II service animal. And so on his birthday, the Pentagon would send him, from the Department of the Navy, they'd send him a telegram just wishing him a happy birthday. So, you know, very important cat. 7 decorations from the U.S. Navy. There was, in the 1950s, there was a Los Angeles company that started giving medals to cats in the United States called the Puss in Boots Medal, and we have one.
We have one
with us. If you want to pop this up on screen, we have an original Puss in Boots medal. And we talk about this a lot in the book. One of the things, you know, cats, even up to the 1950s, were really still second to dogs. But this Coast Fisheries owned a pet food company by the name of Puss in Boots, and they, to promote their cat food, they started giving out medals to cats who had done heroic and great and distinguished things. And so they started passing out these medals, which would make headline news in local communities and kind of really upgrade the status of cats in American life. The Puss in Boots Bronze Award of Honor and Feline Merit
has further elevated the cat as man's friend, loyal companion, and vigilant protector. Where did you get this?
That is a great story, and it is a story people in Los Angeles will really appreciate. I had one, very rare. I had a mint condition, uncirculated, no, she's coming to life, yeah, uncirculated Puss in Boots medal, and someone broke into my car in downtown LA and stole it. Oh. And I went down on Skid Row talking to everybody, offering a reward to get this medal back, and the only information I ever got was that a drug dealer told me someone had been trying to buy crack using a large coin with a picture of a cat on it. And
that's the most Paul Koudounaris story I've ever heard in my life.
Why do I have another? Amazingly, a woman who I had met from Instagram contacted me and said that her father had owned a bar, and there was a cat there that had won a big bronze medal, and asked if I was interested in it, and I sure was. This medal, this was not an uncirculated medal. Ours was awarded to a cat by the name of Mrs. Tinker in New York. Mrs. Tinker was the cat that made the band stop playing, because Mrs. Tinker was giving birth in a jazz club. And she was a stray who had snuck into a jazz club and was giving birth underneath the stage. And somebody noticed something was going on under the stage while the band was playing. They looked down and saw this band, and you know, the guys in the band and the owner of the club saw this mama cat giving birth to a litter. And so they stopped the band and they disassembled the stage. And they took the piece of the stage and built like a little nest for her to give birth in. And the woman who I got the medal from got one of Mrs. Tinker's kittens.
Oh, yeah, that's all. So this one has a nice backstory too. Now, and
yeah.
Somebody got some crack out of it.
Well, no, they didn't, because the guy said he didn't sell it to them.
Oh,
yeah. So it is.
So we want to make sure that there's time for discussion on Baba and questions. So let's do room 8.
Okay,
let's move to room 8.
So the book stops in a very specific place. And if we can put this back up on screen, this photo, the most famous cat in the history of Los Angeles, the most endearing cat in the history of Los Angeles. And in this book, kind of her culmination, our narrator's culmination of American cats and just cats and humans in general, is the story of a school cat in Echo Park by the name of Room 8. And if you've never heard of Room 8, of course it's a double entendre, right? Room 8 being the room of the school that the cat first appeared in and kind of lived in for a long time, but also roommate. This cat had appeared at Elysian Heights Elementary School and lived there for 16 years, snuck in one day, pillaged a bunch of people's lunches in the late 1940s. And, you know, they came back from recess and everyone was like, oh, yeah, this damn cat snuck in and stole my lunch. And you know how kids can see the beauty sometimes that adults can't. And they just looked at that cat and their anger passed. And that cat, who was already about 6 years old, who had been living on his own, saw in those kids something that he had always wanted. You know, it's like it was just instant love between children and this cat. Because this cat then realized that he loved children. And so he becomes the greatest flunky in the history of the LA Unified School District. He flunks the 6th grade 16 years in a row, comes back, never misses a day in school, and he becomes the heart and soul of that school and kind of the heart and soul of the community. And it's something we forget now because, you know, it's like, as we said, you know, we tell history from the human perspective. We don't tell it from the feline perspective. And so we remember the people from the 1950s. We don't know the cats from the 1950s. That cat was the heart and soul of that school. And if you don't believe me, here's his gravestone. Still, to this day, the most visited grave in the entire pet cemetery. Just people coming back to meet their friend. And I brought some ephemera. During his lifetime, his biography was published. A cat rescue to this day still exists in his name. It operates in Riverside. And I have here another piece of show and tell. Here is one of the Room 8 friendship medals. When he died, as because the school couldn't really afford to hold a funeral and buy a grave for a cat. You saw how big his gravestone is, right? It's huge. The reason his grave is so huge is they started making like a promotion and can anyone donate money to Room 8? Maybe you could get one of these medals or something. And they wound up with so much more money than they needed that he has one of the largest graves in the entire pet cemetery. I mean, Room 8's grave is much bigger than Valentino's dog. It's absolutely huge. So this stray cat made good winds up with this gigantic grave. And as I said, he is the heart and soul of that school. If you want to pop up the screen, I'll show you. So outside the school, if you walk down there today, now it says on the gravestone that he was born in 1947, 1946 or 1947. He doesn't show up and become the official school cat until 52, and then he's named the official cat of Elysian Heights Elementary. But if you walk by that school, still to this day, after he died, they poured in concrete, and people could come back, like people who had known him, could come back and write messages. So pictures of him, some people just making little drawings and stuff, but people leaving words in his honor, you know, oh, how we miss you. You'll have to pardon me because the computer is actually too far away for me to see. Can you read that? He came in our room and sat on our table, on my table.
I loved him.
Yeah. Some of these will make you tear up, actually. Be careful. But in the hearts of happy children, this cat will live forever. That's from a newspaper, right?
The Call of Duty, teaching love and kindness to children.
Is that from Citizen Daily News? I think it's from a newspaper. Sorry, guys, this computer is too far away for us to see. To please and make happy were his only.
The faith never died. He was loved and true. His faith never died.
Let's leave it with this one's a simple one. He left his love, and we are blessed. And what more do we need to say about the relationship between cats and people and cats? They give us our love. Whether or not we're worthy of it, I don't know. And if you read this book, you may question that. But they give us our love. And they leave us with it. And that's all we can ever ask for. And we are blessed by it, even if our big star for the evening is still asleep. Let's see what happens if we put it tight on.
And I should say, just as a side note, Paul loves cats more than anybody I have ever met. And so everything that he writes in this book is incredibly sincere. He loves these stories just as much as the people who lived them and the people who were saved by a heroic cat or learned from a heroic cat or had a film star cat. Paul loves all of these cats quite equally. And especially this particular cat right here. Oh,
she's on the table. She's ready for her moment. All right, she's awake. Here, put her on. Put her down.
Okay, she's
put
ready.
Her down right here. Yeah, she's awake now.
So
right,
let's
I
talk.
know her well
While
enough.
you're all doing your question, so if you have a question, there is an ask a question tab.
Look at the screen.
But we also want to talk about your relationship with
There
Baba.
we go. Look at that. Oh, here. Bobby, here. Turn and look at the screen. We want to see. Look at that pirate cat.
We are now getting an intimate look into the process
Yes, this
of
is
creating
the
a cat
creative
photo.
process of creating a cat photo. Look at her. Look at her.
Look, you're perfect. Did you see that star quality? She just looked at the
See,
camera.
and people ask me, it's like, how do you take these pictures? Look, she's just like, whatever, I'll be a pirate now. All right, well, she's awake. We've proven she's a real cat, and I can sit back down with her on my lap. Come on, Baba.
So tell me how you got Baba, or when did Baba choose you? I should say.
I got her at the LA Animal Shelter on Lacey Street, Northeast Animal Shelter. I had actually, this is in the back of the book. There's a little afterword from the human, and I talk about how we met. I had actually gone in to get another cat, and I had visited this other cat repeatedly while it was locked up, because there's a holding period. In LA, it's usually like 10 days, or depends, like a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, depending on the shelter. And I had visited this cat repeatedly, and I was sure this cat was mine, and I got there that morning. Problem because someone else wanted the cat. I wound up getting the cat, and I was devastated because I visited the cat so much. And as I was leaving brokenhearted, this little paw reaches out. It's like, excuse me, hi. And she stared into my soul. And if you know that look, you'll understand what I'm saying, because then you realize it's like, oh, the cat's had it figured out all along. The other cat was just a ploy to get me here on the right day to find you. And anyway, she was very sickly at the time. Even the people in the pound were like, we don't know all about this one. This one's pretty sickly and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, this one owns me now, though. So she kind of has to come home with me. And she was very sickly and had just been fixed. So she was, kind of whacked out. And I had another cat at the time. And I put her in my back room, and I put this big screen, I had this Moroccan screen, and I put over the doorway to keep the two cats apart, to keep her back there. Somehow this little cat, so sickly, and had just had a surgery, in the middle of the night had this incredible determination and climbed over the screen and let herself down. This screen was 6 feet high. It's a tiny little sickly cat, and came and found me on my bed. And I woke up, and she's just sitting there on my bed, staring down at me. And it's like, all right, get over here. And I just tucked her under the covers, and she was shivering and shaking because she was sick. And I warmed her. I was like, God, I hope you survived through the morning. And she did. And she's still with me. And she's
How long ago was that?
She's probably 9 or 10 now.
And she's been your muse ever since. But when did she really become your muse? When was the first pirate hat that you put on her? When was the first little outfit?
So there was a point at which I had 3 cats, and she was the middle cat, and there was a little bit of that middle child thing going on or something. And like everybody, I wanted to take pictures of my cats, and especially
relatable.
Yeah, especially photographers. So one thing I noticed from early on, when I pull out the camera, the other cats would just sit there like, and she'd be like, hey, and come alive, just like when it was like, it's like, okay, now it's time to wear the pirate hat. And she goes from asleep and seemingly comatose to posing perfectly in the pirate hat. And it became one of these things like if you had a basketball team and you had Michael Jordan sitting on the bench, you'd be like, yeah, I know it's kind of neat if everybody gets a chance to play, but why don't you go in and play? Because you're kind of just better. And so she just became the model because she was so good at it. And over time, we started adding costumes and props and other things because it was really an expression of bonding. It was like a magnification of our bond. You know, how far can we push this communication between species in order for me to get to communicate a role to you? And out of the goodness of her heart, you know, she wants to please me. You know, one of the things that would happen, because she reads me so well, she can usually knows exactly what I want her to do. Like when I put the pirate hat on her, and I'm like, okay, you got to look at the screen, and eventually she's like, oh, he wants me to look there.
Well, not only will she'll do that, she'll make like an R face.
Yeah.
Like she seems to know what a
knows,
pirate
she knows
is.
now, and well, because she reads it from me. Because I know I've always said these photos are self-portraits with her playing the roles that I devise, and there were many times when we would be working on a photo and it just wasn't working out. And I'd take her, we would shoot them on a little box, and I would take her off the box and I'd put her down and start taking the costume off, and she'd swap my hand. She'd be like, no, we're not done. And she would jump back up in the box and she would stare at me. She's like, we're not done. I know this isn't right. Don't baby me. And I mean, she's serious about it. And so, you know, she's the real deal. I mean, she is a model, and she knows, she doesn't necessarily know her craft, but she knows her director well enough to know what the outcome's supposed to be. She picks it up from it.
She doesn't know her craft, but she knows her art, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm going to take a look at some of your questions. Yeah. One that came in earlier that I really liked was, is there a particular fabric that Baba likes? Is there a particular type of outfit, like a silken fabric or something that when you put on, she seems to really enjoy?
No, she doesn't really care because the outfits are never very tight fitting. You know, velours and stuff like that are nice because they're soft, but she doesn't really care. She's even a couple times worn like latex outfits. As long as they're not tight on her, she doesn't care.
Okay, so she'll wear anything.
Yeah.
That's a true model, right?
Yeah,
a true
exactly.
model wears anything. What time in history would you most like to be a cat? What's the golden age for felines?
You know, well, a lot of people would say ancient Egypt. I would say, like, based on my personality, and I think clearly the personality that she conveys as the narrator, it's that age of exploration. It's that adventure when cats leave Europe and start colonizing the world with ships. I think that would be an incredibly exciting time. A rough time. That would be a time for, you know, there are no purebreds out on those ships. There are no dainty cats, but that would be an incredible time. You know, those cats were so valued in some places that there was some Polynesian island where people were just, they had never seen them before. And the natives were sneaking onto these English ships and literally just stealing the cats because they wanted them, because they were so unusual. It's like, this is crazy. They're so docile and they're fun and you can pet them.
Yeah, I'd want a cat too if I saw it. Never seen one before. This is a great question. So tabbies, not a breed, but from the tabbies you know, do you feel like there are particular characteristics that define them?
Yeah, I think that this is just my opinion. I think tabbies have the most even personality of any cat.
I found that too.
I think tabbies are somehow, they're more cat-like than any other type of cat. That they're somehow having those stripes just makes them a little bit closer to the great cat god in the sky or something. They're a very natural cat.
Yeah, they're cat's cat.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Someone wants to know when really was the first photo shoot? Like, when did the outfit go on and something clicked into place and you're like, okay, we're having a real shoot now. The time has come. Let's do this.
Okay. So it was around Cinco de Mayo several years ago, and someone had given me a little sombrero, and I cut a mustache out, like a handlebar mustache out of paper, and I colored it in black, and I put little wires from the sombrero to the mustache. And I still have this picture somewhere. It's not, there's no background or anything. I was just like, would you do this?
Yeah,
like would you wear this hat with this mustache? And the mustache she wasn't actually wearing the mustache. A question I get a lot. In the book, there are some where she has facial hair, like mustaches and beards. That comes later because I would cut those out of human hair, mustaches and beards, and put them on with toupee tape, just like a little tiny piece of toupee tape somewhere. But this was the first one. The mustache was not attached to her. It hung down from wire. It was made of paper and hung down from wires from the sombrero. And I put it on her, and she just looked at me and smiled. It's like, oh, you're really something, aren't you?
Yeah, then you knew.
It was that Cinco de Mayo photo.
It was that, and I feel like I remember that. That was, what, how, 3-4 years ago?
No, that was like 6 years ago.
6 years ago? Oh, gosh. We've known each other a long time. This is a great question. Do you commission the costumes that Baba wears? Do people give them to you? Do you, are the people particularly working on these costumes?
That is a great question. When it started, I was repurposing especially teddy bear outfits and old doll outfits. There's an entire society of doll collectors that exists out there. And they actually, pre-COVID, obviously, they had flea markets. And I used to go to the doll flea markets and just pick up scrap doll outfits. And I would recut everything. A couple of the outfits I made entirely from scratch myself. This one on the cover, actually, I made from scratch with old pieces of velvet. And I got a doll wig, which I had styled. But eventually we did come to a point that was beyond what I could do. To finish this book, there was, I believe it was 8. There were 8 costumes that I had on my list that were just beyond what I could do. And I hired a very brilliant girl I know who works on films in LA, who was out of work at the time, named Desiree Hepp. And Desiree is the one who completed the last of the set for me. She's the one who did the Napoleon entirely from scratch. I had the samurai helmet, but I didn't have the armor for it. And she made that armor, I think, out of like an old placemat or something. Just really clever, super creative stuff. So the last set of them, I hired someone.
And this is, Paul's going to hate that I'm doing this, but Baba and Paul are incredibly generous. And I love basketball very much. Unknown fact. Big basketball fan. Big LA Clippers fan.
I think it's actually pretty well known.
Is it well known?
I think so, yeah.
Oh gosh, it's my brand now. But this is the little LA Clippers
we
jersey.
We made a photo for her before the Clippers bombed out of the playoffs.
Yeah, it was for Pa George. And it was adorable. And Baba just stepped up. She made game face. Well, this is what's so amazing about Baba is that she really plays with gender. She plays with understanding. Like, look at what a regal photo this is. But then next thing you know, she's like a rough basketball player. She's ready to go into games.
Actually, if they want to put the slides back on the screen, I'll run through some slides of photos from the book.
Yeah, that would be great if that's possible. Yeah, to finish us out here.
Yeah, and we can take a few more questions as we go too. But if they want to pop those up, and you can ask any questions you want about some of the photos. So this one winds up on the cover. This is the samurai one I was talking about. A question I get is, how can she possibly wear a helmet like that? It's made of metal. In instances like this, some of these heavy costume pieces are actually suspended. They're suspended by an invisible thread from the ceiling or sometimes from a rod going back behind it that plugs into the wall, because I put a joint in the wall that it could screw things into. And so what she actually does, that helmet is perfectly stable. She's just wearing the armor and she sticks her head up in the helmet.
How do you get her to do that?
You've seen, like, she's asleep and then she puts on the pirate hat and it's perfect. She's good, The devil one's. This is another one. This one is suspended by those tubes. So the diving helmet was suspended from the ceiling by the tubes, and there's no other part of the outfit, which is why it has that crop. And she's just kind of staring, like she's underwater and staring over at that shark. But that's another one. She just comes over, sticks her head up into the helmet, and kind of like, I motioned her, look over at the shark. And we only did this was a hard one to do, honestly, because that's really tough for a cat to understand. Stick your head in a helmet, stick it out and look at the shark. So fortunately she got it on like the 3rd take. We were done. We didn't bother with her. The pirate, there was the same pirate hat she was wearing. The pirate hat, yeah. That headdress was made by a friend of mine named Silva. It's the Cleopatra one. And this was made by a friend of mine named Silva who works under the name Bubbles and Frown. Well, this was a simple one, wasn't it? But a peaceful one.
But she nails it.
Yeah. This was the Calamity Jane, is what we called it at the time. This is one of my favorites. That hat that she's wearing, the coonskin cap for Davy Croc cat, was made by our friend from Indonesia.
Oh.
Katie Inamorado, the taxidermist in New Jersey.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she made that coonskin hat for me. She really nailed this one too. That is a great
perfect size.
Cat. Yeah, Dave. Well, no, I'm talking about Baba.
Oh yeah, Baba.
But
well,
yeah,
no.
Katie got it right too. Okay, well, yeah, you credit her, I credit the cat. This one has many names. Whatever you want, whatever Roman pun you want to assert. Meerkat Aurelius or whatever you want to call it, but
Mucus Aurelius.
Yeah. The Viking one. This is another one where my friend Desiree, the girl I mentioned, she's the one who made that armor because that armor is spectacular. That armor, the shoulder plates are actually cut away from the top of the helmet because the helmet had sidekins, so she cut them away and used them as shoulder pads. And then that's another one where the helmet, there's actually a rod. You can't see it because the perspective blocks it. But there's a rod behind the helmet, a metal rod that goes back into the wall, so it screws into the wall, so that helmet is perfectly stable. And she just sticks her head up into it. The Warhol one, that's another one where she got that immediately. Because Warhol's expression is often a lack of expression. And this one, we literally did one take, because always I'll put her in the costume and we'll do a practice shot. And I looked at the practice shot and it's like, okay, just go play. We're done. That's it. That's it. You got it. You understand Andy Warhol bit. I have a PhD in art history, and honey, you understand Andy Warhol better than I, because that's right. This is a Napoleon one that I mentioned. Like I said, the girl who made this costume really is a genius, because you see especially how she tucked that arm back in with a piece of fun fur, to make it to match Bob's fur. The Sleeping Mummy. She really didn't. This was one of okay. So as I said, most of the time she gets exactly what I want. This is exactly what I didn't want for ancient Egypt. But then when I looked at it, it's like, you know what? This is better than what I wanted. Let's just go with your version, kid. The caveman ones were underrated. No one really. The caveman ones were never popular. I always really liked them. This is kind of Barney Rubble. This is Lord Nelson, Admiral Nelson. This is Felicette, the space cat. So one of the cats I mentioned in the book, a very famous cat that she talks about in the book, and a big hero to her, is the first cat, and to this day, the only cat in space by the name of Felicette. While the Russians were working on that space program with dogs, and the Americans were sending, they sent that chimp named Ham out in space, the French were working on a space program with cats. And they scoured Paris for the right cat. They found this cat named Felicette in an alley, and they tested a bunch of cats for the best characteristics of flying into space, which basically meant you weren't going to have a heart attack or something when the rocket took off. And Felicette was the perfect cat, sent her out into space, and unlike Laika, the first dog who went out of space, who never came back, who died, Felicette came back alive. They and was she really an astronaut? Well, she went as high as the first American in space and stayed up as long. And they retrieved her. They shot her up from Algeria. They retrieved her from the Sahara Desert and sent her back to Paris as kind of a hero.
Oh, she's an astronaut.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is the Cardinal Richelieu. Cardinal Richelieu is also prominent in our book. In chapter 5, we talk about how cats go from this very depressing time during the Great Witch Hunts, where they're really seen to be servants of the devil, to being beloved again. And Cardinal Richelieu of France is a big part of that, because he really loved cats when it wasn't fashionable to, and he had the power as a person, as a statesman. He had the power to not care about popular opinion and not have anybody say a damn thing, because he was too powerful a guy. So he's a big hero in the history of cats. So this is her as Cardinal Richelieu. And this is kind of one of my favorites. This is the last one in the series that I brought today. But I just called this one Mew La La. She had Mew La La because it's really, we spent a long portion of this book talk talking about my chapter 6, which is cats in Southern California and cats in the United States. But it's really the French who are the saviors of the domestic cat. Because after the great witch hunts, the stock of cats was very low, and they became popularized again in France. It was the French avant-garde in particular, around the time of Impressionism, who really started championing them. Guys like Manet loved cats. Writers like Victor Hugo loved cats. And while the rest of society was dedicated to the dog, these guys who were romantics and who the early avant-garde, they wanted to be different and think different. They said, we're going to find our inspiration in the cat, not in the dog. And so loving cats in the 19th century was really a very French thing.
Bon. All right, I think we're about to wrap up, so I will ask a final question, which is, I know Baba has
Oh, I'm echoing. The voice of God.
It's fine. It's my time. Baba's been researching cats and cat history for many, many years. What is the story in the book that thrilled her when she learned it? Still got her after all the years of research. Just made her, surprised her, or made her the most happy?
I don't know about making her the most happy. I'll tell you the one that I think is the most emotionally poignant is Simon the Able Sea Cat. And for those of you who don't know who this is, which maybe is the majority of the audience and who haven't read the book yet, there was a cat who was the ship cat of a British gunboat called the Amethyst in the late 1940s, after World War II, but it was still a lot of tension in Asia. And this ship was stationed in Asia, and it was sent up the Yangtze River to relieve the British embassy in Nanking when the communists were taking over China. And this cat had been found on a dock, and they brought this cat on board, hoping that it might be able to help with the rodent problem. Eventually, you read the book, and you'll see this cat saves their lives. This cat saves their lives when their ship is disabled. And it is really that cat who's almost, I hate to say this, but it's almost kind of like a Christ-like figure, because he dies very young. He dies through no fault of his own. It's almost like, the British government, becomes kind of like a Judas-like figure. The bureaucrats turn on him, and he winds up getting sick on the ship. But it is that cat who really opens the doors for cats today as members of our household, as beloved family members. Because, like I said, we talked about some of this already, like, the Puss in Boots medal. Up in the 1950s, cats were still secondary to dogs. Simon dies in the late 1940s, and he dies as a huge celebrity. He's the only cat up until that time who ever receives the Dickon Medal, which is the animal version of the Victoria Cross. He receives, as that ship is steaming back home to England, he receives at every port bags and bags of mail and thank you and treats and stuff sent from people around the world for what he has done to help save those boys who were trapped on the ship. And so it is really his fame. His biography is published as soon as they get back to England. It's really his fame that opens the doors for these cats. But it's also, as I said, it's also a tragic story, because he winds up, when he gets back to England, they won't let him off the ship because they want him to go through quarantine because, he's a non-native cat. It's like, guys, just give this cat a medal. It just saved your ship. And he winds up getting a cat disease while he's on the ship and dying in quarantine. And it's just a very emotionally poignant story.
If that doesn't give you a sense of what you will read in A Cat's Tale by Baba the Cat and her human Paul Koudounaris, I don't know what will. Book Soup has a bunch of these that are steaming towards them right now. There's going to be a little pautograph in them if you order from Book Soup. And for those of you who have loved Paul for years, fantastic. If you've just discovered Paul Koudounaris tonight, you're welcome. There's so much more.
Oh, look! Yay! She's looking.
He has
to offer the world.
And thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Book Soup. All right.
Great.
I think Maggie, back.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's a wrap on our presentation. Thank you again to our guests and all of you who tuned in this evening. We greatly appreciate everyone's time and your support of independent bookstores. Purchase a copy of A Cat's Tale by clicking the green button below. We're also accepting donations on our website. If you'd like regular updates on our upcoming events, make sure to follow us on Crowdcast and subscribe to our newsletter. Have a great evening and stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.